Like that. Of course, now I'm frozen, but also live. Hello. Welcome to Mighty Blaze. I am Jenna Blum, one of the co-founders of The Blaze, and today I am so thrilled to have here with me my brother from another mother, Sean Murphy, who misses the 70s, but also is the founder of 1455 Literary Arts and an author in his own right, and also the founder, as we shall hear, of a brand new publishing imprint. Welcome, Sean. Welcome back to The Blaze, I should say.
Hello, my dear sister, Jenna. As I tell you every time I see you, I cherish every opportunity to get some time with you. And thank you to you and The Blaze. As you know, I adore and am inspired by the work that you guys do. So total honor to be here to chat with you.
I'm so thrilled to have you back. All right. Hello, Robin. Hello, everybody who's watching out there in Blazelandia. We have a very special show for you today. So before I start raking Sean mercilessly over the coals, let me do a little commercial for The Blaze in case you are new here. We are a team of about 30 creative professional volunteers who started linking authors and their new books with readers in the age of COVID. And obviously, we have gone well beyond that, thank God. So you can still come to The Blaze 6 years later, almost 7 years later, to still see your favorite authors and their new books and all of the hottest literary endeavors in your living room without even having to put on pants. If you like what you see here, please give us a like or a follow on Facebook, on YouTube, on Instagram, on Twitter, which I refuse to call X, on Substack. What did I forget? TikTok. Oh my God, I forgot TikTok. We are ubiquitous, and please consider signing up for our newsletter at www.amightyblaze.com so you never have literary FOMO ever again. No more FOMO. Nobody likes that. And now, without further ado from moi, I'm going to introduce our special guest today, Sean Murphy. Sean, you ready for your bio?
Let's do it.
All right, buckle up. It's you. Sean Murphy is the founder of the nonprofit 1455 Literary Arts and directs the Center for Story at Shenandoah University. He has appeared on NPR's All Things Considered and been quoted in USA Today, the New York Times, the Huffington Post, and Ad Age. A longtime columnist for Pop Matters, Sean and his work have also appeared in Salon, The Village Voice, Washington City Paper, The Good Men Project, Writer's Digest, and others. His poetry collections include, I meant to go into my library and pull down your poetry, which I have on the shelf, and bring them in and be like, I have the poetry. His poetry collections include The Black and Blues, Rhapsodies in Blues, and Kinds of Blue. Note there's a theme there. And his first collection of short fiction, This Kind of Man, was published in 2024. Sean has been nominated 4 times for the Pushcart Prize, twice for Best of Net, and his book, Please Talk About Me When I'm Gone, which was just a total heart tugger, pull her out of your chest, pull it right through your throat, was the winner of Memoir Magazine's 2022 Memoir Prize. To learn more about Sean and read his published short fiction poetry criticism, please visit seanmurphy.net and at bullmurph. Also, he's on Substack, where he writes more like every week than I write in like a year. So you should definitely follow 1455 Literary Arts on Substack to find out what he is up to. Also, in case you aren't tired just from listening to that bio, as we mentioned, Sean is the founder of 1455 Literary Arts, and he is starting a new book imprint, which is so needed in our world, 1455 Books, which we are here to talk about today. Sean, let's start with 1455 Literary Arts for those in our audience who might not be already familiar. Can you just explain to us what even is 1455 Arts?
Well, thank you. And you know you're with a good friend when they read the long version of the bio. So I'm exhausted. I don't even know if I have the energy to keep going after listening to that. But
I know it's definitely done so much in your life already. But yes, I mean you deserve this. These are your earned accolades because it's just facts.
All right. Well, thank you for that. So yeah, folks, those of you that are tuning in, thank you for being here and being interested. 1455, which is named after the year Gutenberg's press first started putting books in the world, which is a momentous and opportune title. But for me, it actually there's like kind of a socio-political import to that, because one way of looking at the Gutenberg press is that was the first kind of cultural moment that the creation and distribution of books was taken out of the clergy and the elite's hands, and it made it possible for things like paperbacks and, you know, magazines and newspapers, and of course Bibles, to be put into the world. So using that name, I was inspired by an experience I had at with the now defunct but then thriving Noepe Center at Martha's Vineyard. I went there for a writer's retreat and had an unbelievable time. I was then invited to come up and help run the place and be the writer in residence. So shout out to my boy Justin Aaron, a visionary poet, brilliant human being. And when Noepe kind of disbanded, I was so in love with what we were doing, I wanted to keep it going. So I thought maybe I could start something like this in Virginia, which is where I live. And very long story short, put together a business plan, got some investors, and we were really excited about creating a physical space that would be a year-round writing retreat, event space. Then COVID happened. The cost of construction went through the roof, and there was just so much, you know, uncertainty and lack of stability. I put that vision, which is not dead, it's dormant, but I put the vision of a writing retreat on the back burner. And much like you guys with Blaze, I really leaned into programming and virtual programming, and 1455 has kind of mutated and evolved like a first draft, right, of a novel. It's kind of moved in with what I was feeling, what I was seeing, and what it has kind of functioned as is really a catch-all. Like we celebrate storytelling, and we just take any opportunity through programming, through our very modest platform, to just talk about books, talk about writers. I run a podcast series where I talk to interesting people like Jenna Blum and just promote like the art of storytelling and talk about it. And I think it's an endeavor that cuts across artistic and political and, you know, academic avenues. And I have dipped my toes in a lot of those fields. So yeah, I mean, it's really kind of a labor of love. And it's a lot of work, but it helps me be in contact with amazingly creative, generous, kind people. So it truly, in the literal sense, is labor of love.
I have so many questions depending from that excellent answer. Like, how do you just create a business plan and put something into the world? Like, and I do love the founder stories. When I was in the early days of Blaze and really flying by the seat of my pants, because I'm not a business person, I'm a writer, which is kind of at odds with being a business person in many ways. I would sometimes take breaks and take my dog to the woods. And on the way, I would listen to Guy Raz podcasts about entrepreneurs. And I was like, I actually really love doing this. And who even knew that I was bossy and wanted to run a crew? Like, who even knew? But can you talk about like the sort of early days of 1455, like a little bit pre-pandemic and pandemic? Like, how do you just put together a business plan and find investors? Everybody here wants to know how to get the money, Sean. How to get the money.
Dumb luck for the most part, and being dumb enough to venture without a net, so that there's really, you know, once you burn the proverbial boats, you either swim or drown. For me, part of my backstory, you know, I've been writing. You and I have certainly known each other for a long time. You know, I mean, I'm a dinosaur, right? Like, I had my first poetry and fiction published in the early 90s, like a million years ago. But I was not lucky, good, etc. enough. Never been a writer that made a living at it. So I had a real job for many years, and I ended up in the tech industry, which ended up, you know, never would have predicted that as a graduate student in English. But I ended up in the tech industry and became a tech analyst, and was writing a lot about the different industries. And my sweet spot was the intersection of like cultural entertainment and how technology is constantly playing with that. So, you know, TVs went from being smaller to huge, audio systems went from being huge to small, and like all these different things were happening. But during that time, I was in the corporate world, and inevitably, as I got older and more experienced, I had to work on things like business plans. I was like yourself, and still consider myself at best, and like I'm a novice, and I know very little, and I'm very uninterested in business as such. But I was at least acquainted with the world of spreadsheets and the idea of how a department or how our company can run, it wasn't completely foreign to me. So I think that helped. But when I first started to think like, in order to make this happen, I need a business plan. I used some of my knowledge, but I kind of made it up as I went along, and just, well, I guess literally brick by brick, I thought, if I'm going to open a retreat, what is that going to involve? And it was like securing a property. What would it cost to run the place? And I mean, I went down from like, how much toilet paper would 8 people use in a week? How much water would and I mapped out every scenario. And again, I think people took pity on me and said, he's putting so much effort into this. Like, let's make a small investment. So it gave me the opportunity to purchase a property, and then kind of grew from there. So mostly dumb, blind, stumbling around. But I mean, I did have some background. Like, I wasn't just a writer that said, I want to do this. And I do think that I've seen a lot in the nonprofit world. Sometimes it's not the best idea for artists. Just like people that love food don't necessarily make the best restaurant owners. Like, you do have to have a taste for it, or else your good intentions, very genuine, but you might not be savvy enough or respect how ugly capitalism is to at least be able to navigate it.
Yeah, I imagine you get weeded out quickly. I'm probably one of those people who should have been weeded out, but I have an excellent team. And you are also a nonprofit, and we are not a nonprofit. So there is that. But I mean, it's interesting. Like, what you're saying is like a cautionary tale to me in 2020 February, because I have no business background. And the reason I was kind of laughing when you mentioned spreadsheets is I did not know what a Google Doc was when I first started Blaze. I was walking my dog with my friend Kirsten Liston, who's our business advisor, and we were in the Boston Public Garden wearing our masks, 6 feet apart. And she's like, if you were using Google Docs, it would be easier for everybody on your team. And I was like, what even is that? And she was like, okay. Like, she runs her own multi-million-dollar company. And my team still says to this day, if you want to make Jenna's car disappear, you want to steal it, you can wrap it in a spreadsheet and drive it away. Because I have like spreadsheet blindness. My brain, although I will say that that I have learned a little bit more about how to do spreadsheets, but I just think the idea of like, oh, I just did this thing and I was lucky. Like, I think you are being characteristically modest. And I think that there's a lot of 1% inspiration, 99% perspiration that goes into shaking down all those trees. And I wonder, like, what was the favorite thing about starting 1455, and what was the hardest thing about it?
It's a great question. I think what I used to joke about, and it's still a joke because I don't take it that seriously, but like, the one thing I unabashedly boast about is just because I've been in the corporate world. I love my experience at college. I've been writing and among that world and among academia. Like, 20 years ago, I used to joke, like, if I could monetize my Rolodex, I'd be a millionaire, because I've just met so many cool people, and I love people. I love learning. I love being the dumbest guy in the room, and I often am. So I really had this list of like just high achieving people, but not just in the art world, which of course is where my heart is, but like business people and people that do amazing things that I was drawn to, because I knew I wouldn't ever want to do that. But I mean, I wanted to learn from a chef, or I wanted to learn from someone that is, and I've worked with people that use spreadsheets, like they can toggle in and out of screens. It makes your head spin. So I had this Rolodex, and again, I used to say it very sardonically, but I'd be like, too bad I can't monetize that, because there's the only thing I was good at, besides writing. But as I started to think about a business plan, I had these resources that I could go to and get advice or get opinions or bounce things off of. And as it got more serious, like, really call on some friendships and say, I really want to talk through X with you, or Y. And then that leads you to, you meet that person, they introduce you to this person. I think a combination of the perspiration, some built-in goodwill, and just, a very genuine curiosity, which is every writer's best friend. Feeling like, if I'm going to do this, I've kind of got to immerse myself and understand, like, what is it to own a property? What is it to run a nonprofit? What is it to build a business plan? And I think, like with writing, if you're getting published, that doesn't mean that you're a good writer. And if you're not getting published, of course, it doesn't mean you're not. But if things are happening, that's good validation. As I got further into like the business plan, certain things were happening that allowed me to keep going. So it was very incremental. But that was fun. There was an adventure to that. And, you know, I left the corporate world. Like I did kind of burn the boats, and there was a sense of like, well, if this doesn't work out, I know I can get a job, which I didn't feel that blasé, but I was like, I've got a resume. Like I can go back if I have to, but in hindsight, like not doing it kind of half-assed, I don't know if it would have worked if I'd kept a day job and said, I'm going to start doing this. It just would have taken a long time. But I think the going all in, the audacity of that in some ways ensured that it was going to happen.
The audacity of hope. You know, it's funny, like, you guys can see why I love this guy so much.
Well, and you asked the word, you know, the worst thing. I think you said the best thing. The worst thing, of course, is, you know, the money. Money is always a commodity. I mean, for any human being, but for any artist, for any nonprofit, I think one of the things that's kept me grounded, Jenna, is that the money is very difficult to get. And while, again, my heart and my track record, like support for the arts all day, every day, but especially when I was really working on the property we looked at, like that was, you know, the height of the opioid crisis. There's a persistent homeless problem. I mean, everywhere, but in some of the areas I was working in. So it always kept me very grounded. Like if we can't get people enough food, I'm not going to take it too seriously that I'm not getting big investments for building a writing retreat that writers can come to. Like this is the most important thing in my world, but keep it real. We're in a country where we have major issues that people are living and dying with every day. So that also helped me work harder, I guess, because it was like, why should people support this? Or why should this work? The world didn't ask you to do this. You wanted to do this.
This is a great, I love this conversation so much. Sean and I have spoken many times over the decades about being in creative community, building creative community, being writers. I know him first and foremost as a writer, as a poet. It's the first time we've really spoken about your leadership and your entrepreneurship and what it took to build this community as a space, as a mental space, an emotional space, an interview space, a nonprofit space, brick by brick by brick, which is a huge endeavor. And I'm really loving hearing about this. So why should this work? Like in a world that is so rife with problems that, you know, I could look out at the street right now. I'm in downtown Boston and see somebody who is homeless and see like all manner of terrible things going on out in the world just by opening my social media feeds, right? Like, why does the world need storytelling? Why do we need literary arts and a new publishing imprint?
Yeah, I mean, well, first of all, yeah, I mean, because we're storytelling creatures. I know that's kind of a cliche, but I mean, it's true. We are storytellers. Story has evolved, right, from like cave drawings to TikTok, but we need to make sense of our lives by relating what we're feeling and experiencing. And the fact that, again, speaking for myself, the fact that I feel closer to certain characters from books than I do to real people speaks to like, there's something going on there that is so ineffable and so powerful. That's always been my North Star, like celebrating the arts, being part of the arts, promoting the arts, like that's everything. And it's a great question, Jenna. It's like, if people didn't want to support it, they wouldn't, you know, and oftentimes as we see, people don't support it. People do take the arts for granted, think funding for the arts shouldn't exist. And I think it's during those times that we're reminded we shouldn't, gosh, in America, like, can we please figure this out? No, we're gonna have to learn every generation. But once some of these things get taken away, people realize that's what we have a strong military for, to protect our First Amendment. That's why we have, you know, et cetera, so that we can enjoy the fruits of these labors. So to start a press, I mean, I think I've written this on the site, like somewhat facetiously, but it's like, it's the absolute worst time to do an endeavor like this. Therefore it has to happen, because it's like, if yeah, I mean, but it's true. Like it's the worst time to say, you know what, I'm going to go even deeper. And because I should have mentioned, so 1455 has an e-zine, movable type that we've done. We've had story fests, which you've thankfully been a part of. Like we've done programming that has published people, has put programming into the world. A lot of it's evergreen that lives on YouTube or our website. And that's been it's kept me busy. It's kept me very satisfied and helped me make connections. But because I'm seeing opportunities disappearing, and I guess my kind of techie background, my academic background, I've been very obsessed with like the trends in the industries. And to me, like, I just see very clearly the ways that the music industry, crested and then like became a streaming platform. I see elements of book and movie industries going that way. And for me, even if it's a denial, there's an element of like, well, we can use that momentum in a positive way. There are things like AI, streaming and another Marvel, superhero movie getting all the budget. I can't stop that, but can we use technology? Can we utilize some of these tools in ways that democratize the content? And that's the belief that I have. So to launch a press, it's like, can I do it? It's like, the answer is yes. Is it more affordable than it might have been 10 years ago? Yes. Are you going to be able to put some books in the world? Yes. And so then it becomes easy. Then it's just, the hard part is making it happen. But the impetus behind it is crystal clear to me.
I love the Gutenberg democracy reference there, that you're going to make this more accessible. I also love being told it is the worst time to do something or you can't do something. I'm like, great, watch me. Like, it's like a little bit of extra rocket fuel. And I can't help wondering, one of my daily bread sort of podcasters, and also somebody I read every day, is Heather Cox Richardson. And she had a great politics chat the other day when she was talking about what real wealth is. And she was saying wealth is not just money. Like, wealth is the fact that you live in a country that has running water. Like, most of us are able to turn a faucet. We have running water. It's hot water. We flip a switch. Electricity comes on. It's not on for only a few hours a day. It's on all day whenever we require it. We can get healthcare for the time being. We have vehicles. And just that frees us up to do things like storytelling and to embrace narrative that helps us make sense of our lives and the things going on around us. I was really struck by that. But I think a lot about this as a platform builder, quote unquote, and a community organizer, and also as a writer. Do you think that storytelling is niche or threatened in some way by the fact that we're going into an era where a lot of these survival level wealth things are being threatened? Like, people are about to lose their healthcare in a cataclysmic freaking way. Like, are people going to still need story? Sorry, I'm like, really, I didn't have this on my list of questions, but I'm fascinated by this question. Like, is storytelling a luxury or is it a necessity?
No hesitation. It's an absolute necessity. That doesn't mean it needs to compete with food, water, electricity. I think it's why you have the food, water, electricity, so that we're not just surviving, we're living, we're existing and connecting. So to me, again, it truly is because, like, I think it's the parable of the starfish. Like, you walk down the shore and the guy throws one back and he's like, what are you wasting your time? Look, there's thousands of starfish that you let die. And the guy's like, but that one is going to live. It's like, is it an excuse to look at our political and business world right now? The grotesque disparity of wealth that's getting worse. I think we have to work to try to correct that, tell better stories to help more people understand why we're all in this together. But also, because of the dire circumstances, someone has to do something. So I'm very hesitant. Like, I don't have a messianic vibe about any of this, but it's just more of like, who are you to complain, as a writer, as a cultural commentator, if you're not going to roll up your sleeves and try to make a discernible difference? There's literally no, I'm not saving the world, may not be improving the world, but to have a tangible output, to me, the stakes are really high, but the table stakes are like, if I go into this endeavor, launch 1455 books and fail spectacularly, no one got hurt. I lost some money and some street cred, but it's like, if it's even modestly successful, a few more books, and maybe if it's successful, a lot more books come into the world, I think we would all agree, both as readers and writers, we're not publishing enough good books. So that also removes for me the concern, like, but we're polluting. There's so much content. It's like, there's always been junk. There's always been plenty of junk across genres. It's about what underserved voices and communities can we lift up? If I'm able to help do a little bit of that, it's like, I tried to make a difference, and maybe other people got inspired and got involved. It's like, It's the essence of grassroots. I'm not a guy that goes and knocks on doors. I'm enough of an introvert that I don't, at voting time, there's ways I try to contribute, but this is a way that I feel confident and very comfortable trying to disrupt a little bit.
Well, you're throwing a lot of starfish in the ocean if you're publishing a lot of books. And I do think that if people are walking on a beach and they see one person throwing in a starfish, another person may throw in a starfish. I feel like that is an important thing. So tell us about the model for 1455 books. Like, you're starting a publishing imprint. To me, this is kind of like the publishing dream, the writer dream. You think, okay, I'm going to be able to put good books out into the world. Like, what are you looking for? Like, how does one do this?
So, I mean, there's a lot of ways. That's a great. If I couldn't answer that question, I'd have no business even having this discussion. So once again, thank you for having this conversation and asking that. The real honest, I mean, the very genuine answer is I have no idea. But the reality is, per my earlier comment about using the technology trends, I mean, there's a lot that any of us could and should say about like Bezos, about AI, about technology in general. Like there's a lot of problematic, troubling trends in terms of how that's adding to the disparities. But there's also ways that technology has absolutely kind of widened the playing field. And I'll use two quick examples that might sound ostensibly, completely contradictory, but I get a lot of guidance from the music industry. I get the streaming services, and I say that as someone that, first of all, what else can you do these days? But I own like 3,000 CDs, so like I've got my money invested over the years in supporting an old system. But I discover new music literally, and I listen to music all the time. Like I exhausted what I could listen to in a lifetime like 20 years ago, but I'm still discovering new music all the time, and I love that. And I know that a lot of the musicians on Spotify are never going to make a living at it. Like it's just the kind of music they make. Even if the major labels came back and there's just not enough audience, the fact that there's amazingly talented, eccentric, brilliant musicians that are like, we do this because we love it. I'm inspired by that all the time. I think it similarly applies to books. Like, for all the things that I have said and will say about Bezos and his, monstrosity, he revolutionized, like, print on demand is now a very gatekeeper removal system. It's a very ecologically friendly. If you have a digital file, you can upload it to Amazon or a similar type of platform, and that book doesn't physically exist until it's bought. So we're not looking at dozens or hundreds or thousands of books going back to a pulping factory and tearing down trees. Like, there are efficiencies that have been created in the 21st century that are complicated. They're complex. But if you want to start a press or a magazine or a record label, the mechanisms are there. You just need to be passingly familiar with the technology. Through 1455, doing a magazine, I'm very intimate with independent publishing. I know the ins and outs of self-publishing. Like, I've got a toolkit and a team that have been doing this for the organization. So we kind of realized, like, we could be doing books. Like, it's hard, and there's no guarantee that it will be even remotely successful. But the nuts and bolts of making a book come into the world is shockingly easy. What's difficult is doing it well. And then once the product exists, and this is for me the intersection of what all authors are facing right now, or in the 21st century. Once the product exists, then what? It's like, well, then everything else has to happen: the marketing, the PR, the promotion, the design, the distribution, the dissemination, etc., the building of community. We've already covered a lot of those bases. So, again, this audacity to try to do something that I don't have a background in, I realized, in a sense, I do have a background in it. So.
I love this. Okay, so now I'm subtitling your interview, "The Audacity to Publish." If that's what, has, like, some of the interviews on YouTube have sort of a log line, like that's going to be the log line: audacity to publish and hope. So you guys are doing print on demand, it sounds like. You get into some nuts and bolts here. This is so fascinating to me because we have a press here in Boston called Galliot Press that's run by Henriette Lazaridis and Anjali Dutta. And they're also doing print on demand, and they have had their first book picked up by the Washington Post and by NPR. Their second book, I think, is out in the world now, Emily Voss's book, and she's getting some hits and readings. And my question when they were putting this model together, which they were very transparent about with the Boston writing community, my question was, how do you get the distribution? Like, let's say, or like, how do you, even let's back up before that, like how do you make the readers aware that you have these great books so that they can push that button and say, I want to bring this book into the world in a three-dimensional way?
Yeah, I think that Jenna, from where I sit, and first of all, because I think there's a lot of complexity for anyone to answer that. But I think the reality is that any small publishing house has a team that focuses on everything from editing, acquiring, acquisition, editing, promotion, distribution, customer service, etc. If you can cover those things, then it just becomes so what a publishing house does, right? Or any business does, is if you have a community built in, that doesn't hurt. Just like if you open a restaurant and you already have a customer base, that's going to help. So with 1455, we're kind of doing it, not intentionally, but we have done it backwards, which might help us. We've spent the last almost decade building community, building a list, making relationships, having a voice. And again, it's very modest, very humble, but we have a voice, we have a social media presence. So anything we put into the world, at the very least, is going to reach the audience we've built. And then it's a question of strategy. How do you ask people to help you spread the word to people that might be interested? And I think that maybe where the rubber meets the road is that beautiful space between getting it out there and asking for help. And if the product is good, you have a fighting chance. So I say this without cynicism, but I mean, if your goal is, if nothing is riding on it and your goal is just to do good work, I mean, there's no way to fail, but it can only be, upside. So I can tell you truthfully, like if we sell 10 books, personally, I'll consider that a failure just because I should do better. But it's like, if 10 people buy a book and enjoy it, again, that's far from what I'm setting the bar at. But like, I don't see that as a waste of time, but I think I've got enough savvy, and the team that I've worked with has been doing this. We did it for movable. We've been doing it for movable type. And what I realized, Jenna, and I'll maybe get back to the more nuts and bolts, but if I want to put an e-magazine into the world, which is a lot of work and a lot of beautiful design by our creative director, Morgan Ryan, it's like, it's not that different to do a book. If someone else is going to assume a lot of the risk, they might take a chunk of the profit. But if say Amazon can be the customer service, the distribution center, put the books together, the book is as beautiful as you upload the file. I've got my own experience with independent presses, and I have nothing but good things to say about them and any press, full stop, doing any work. Most of these people, if not volunteer, they're very, scarcely paid for doing God's work to help put books in the world. So all the love for any press anywhere. That being said, with resources, dwindling, bandwidth dwindling, it's incumbent on many of us mortal authors to do a lot of the design work, to do a lot of the PR, to do a lot of the marketing. So I've already done that for my own books, ones that have been published by noble, awesome independent presses. But a lot of that responsibility, if you want it to be at another level of quality, you're going to have to get directly involved. So I'm also not necessarily a newbie. Like, I know what it requires to have a professional put a beautiful cover together. You get someone, not this guy, that knows how to do that stuff. And you design something beautiful. And through that kind of ingenuity, you can do it guerrilla style.
I love that. So we haven't seen this in our industry yet, thank God, and hopefully we won't. But I've seen, the mainstream media or the legacy media, whatever term you want to use for it, really sort of being eclipsed by giant conglomerate and political interests, which as a broadcast journalist's daughter gives me great cause for concern. But one of the flip side things to that encroachment there's another Heather Cox Richardson homily, which is that when the big institutions start to be eclipsed, that's when it's time for the smaller newspapers, media outlets, publishers to step up and start offering people content. So I might argue that you're in the right place at the right time. I'm wondering just about your screening process, because we had a great question from Robin, or more of a concern. One of our readers says, my concern is ordering a book and not realizing that it's AI. You were talking about AI a little bit before. And I'm wondering, when you're saying, and I know you have 1,100,000,000% commitment to this, so I don't do spreadsheets or math, commitment to this is like putting good books in the world. Like, how do you screen for that? How do you screen for AI? And also, what makes a book good?
Again, it's a great question. So I've written a lot, and I wouldn't even dare to suggest anyone go to my website, because why would you want to read? But I can just summarize, like TLDR. I've written about AI, and I am as an educator, as an arts advocate, as a writer, there's a lot to be concerned, skeptical. My bottom line, like, assessment is AI is not going to replace writing, because it can't, it shouldn't, it won't. And people that like to read will know the difference. If a few things get through the cracks, that's going to be the exception, not the rule. Just like if a movie is made completely with AI, or music is made with all AI, there might be some stuff that passes the smell test, but most of it won't, because we need that vulnerability, that messiness, that humanness. Mm-hmm. So a lot of the buck stops here for this first. So we're doing 3 books. We plan to do 3 books in 26. The editor and screener is one person. I'm going to have a team helping me, but like I've screened every submission that Movable Type has received, which at this point, since 2020 is, tens of thousands, if maybe not tens, but anyway, thousands of submissions for our story fests. Every panel, every submission gets read. We've done, which I'm very proud of, we used to do an annual team poetry contest. I read hundreds upon hundreds every year. So there is an element of like, yeah, you've got to read every submission. Are there going to be some people that use AI and trick me? Sure. I mean, it's possible. But where I'm going to focus my time and energy is I'm going to know, like, partly because of the submission process. Like, there are ways around. Like, I'm not worried that all of a sudden I'm going to be flooded with a robot that figured out our submission system. But it's a genuine concern. But I feel that the AI concern is kind of like, every now and then when I'm speaking to an audience, or I'm in a writery event, there'll be a aspiring writer will say, "How are you worried someone's going to steal your ideas? What's keeping people from plagiarizing you?" And I'm like, well, 2 things. One, any writer that's really worried about that needs to spend less time imagining that they're going to be a rich, famous writer, and more time doing the work. Like, I don't have any illusions that anyone's going to try to write like poetry like I write, because what lunatic would do that? But also in this day and age, it's a much more advantageous environment, because you've probably got copious backups of if someone stole your work, you could prove it was yours. Mm-hmm. So I don't worry about that. I certainly don't want to sound cavalier. Like, AI that's a whole topic of conversation, but to publish to launch an imprint, AI is like the billionth thing on my list of things that are of immediate concern.
That's good. It's good to know. It's reassuring. I do think, I don't know about you, but I get every day maybe 4 or 5 up to 10 or 15 emails in my inbox that are written by AI. Yep. Now, and they're like, "Dear Jenna Blum, your book, The Lost Family, is a masterpiece of the human heart. It's tragedy. It's lost with a kitchen." Da, 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 da. And actually I got like really excellent descriptions of Murder Your Darlings, which isn't out yet, about, bots pretending to be readers saying, "When I read this, the top of my head blew off because of the thriller pacing in this." I'm like, it's not published yet, bot. But the fact is, like, the first couple of them, I was like, oh, this person gets me. And I'm like, no, it's a bot. And you can always tell, because they always sound the same. And what you said about the messiness of human creativity and emotion, and the thing that really charges good literature, no matter what genre it is, AI doesn't replicate that. Like, the cadence of AI is very even and very rhythmic. It just rolls right along. people aren't like that. Like, we're messier, and in 10 years they may figure out how to mess it up like we do. But in the meantime, like Robin, I think if you're buying books from 1455 Books, you don't have to worry about AI. So I did see a question come in from our audience, from the writer's side of the table. What is the submission process? Are you getting, how many freaking books are you getting now, like manuscripts? This is a new venture.
Yeah.
We want to get in on the ground floor. All the writers out there want to know, how can they get published by you guys?
So that's perfect. It's a perfect segue, because I was going to say the other thing, because again, lest I sound a little too blasé, I'm trying to make a complicated scenario like user friendly for this conversation. But for instance, one of the the field of submissions is definitely intended to dispel easy manipulation, because we ask for a bio, a headshot, a website, a personal statement, and an upload of the manuscript. Like, there are absolutely ways, and some pretty sophisticated ways, to at least, it's not like people are sending me via email and I'm taking the submission. So there are some significant check and balances. But I'm the first person to say technology is always going to be smarter than us. But there are ways to troubleshoot. But the process itself, first of all, I encourage everyone to go to 1455books.com, and it's all there. But right now, we have 3 calls for submissions that have launched. I mentioned the teen poetry contests we did. That led directly to my conviction that we needed to do an annual young poets anthology. So any and all poets from around the world under 21 are welcome to submit on the theme of hope. They can submit 1 to 3 poems through the system at 1455 Books, free submissions all day, every day. And when we get enough of those, we will put an anthology together. We're doing a women writers anthology, which I will say, from our story fests, my favorite content year after year were the specific women panels. I had a Black women writers annual reading and session, blew everything out of the water. So for a million reasons, a women writers anthology, especially, look, for a nonprofit led by a white dude, it's not a political statement so much as it is a way of putting a flag in the sand and saying, we're going to try to make a tiny difference for a necessary, underrepresented group. But the women's anthology is on the theme of silence, which I think in 2025 pretty self-explanatory. Also, free submissions via the site, all free all the time. That could be a poem, an essay, or a short story. I'll say candidly, poems and essays are probably more likely, just because short fiction takes up a lot of bandwidth and the anthology can't be, a phone book. And then we're launching our first book contest, which is totally open for this year. $25 submission fee. We're accepting memoir, fiction, nonfiction, poetry. Hopefully, years ahead, if we're successful, we can start breaking those out and doing one of each. But for this year, the submission fee is literally going to cover some of the expense, because what we're going to do, whoever wins, it'll be chosen by our team. That book's going to get published, and the author retains every penny. Like, there's no split. Like, if that becomes a bestseller, be the greatest, wonderful mistake I ever made. Like, you just published the next Harry Potter. Great. Hopefully they'll pay it forward. So that's the process. But we're accepting, submissions. We're already off and running. We've already got a lot of great ones, but I want it to be a good problem to have, which is there's already too many to publish. Well, good. That means maybe we do 2. I thought, like, I'll know it's working because we'll have more stuff to do.
We are looking forward to amplifying your message and getting it out there, because you're such a force of good in the world, like putting poetry into the world, young poets into the world, female voices in a time when people are trying to silence just about everybody who is not a mean white guy. And I want to make that differentiation very clear. There are the bad white guys, and then there are the good white guys. And what we have right here is a good white guy. Don't forget that, everybody. We have another audience question from Dara, who I know is a writer. Our producer, Karen, wants to pop that up for us. And thank you, Karen, for all your hard work behind the scenes. What is the deadline for submitting to the first book?
So shame on me that I should have these memorized, but I think I've got them written. Yes, I do. Yes, I do. I knew the Young Poets was January 30th of 26. The Women Writers is March 1st, and the books contest is April 30th. If we find the need to extend those, we reserve the right. But I will say, kind of little baby. It's not even a humble brag. It's like a baby brag. We're already in double digits on 2 of those calls, and we're almost at 100 on another one of those calls. So like we're going to be able to do this. I don't want to have too many because I mean there's nothing worse than rejecting anyone for anything, but we all know that everything can't be published. But again, for me, a sign of success, bringing some good necessary voices in the world, done. But if we get a good response and this works, and financially, like every penny that we, so say the youth anthology, sells a lot of books, not expected on any level, but if so, that really will be money we put into doing more books. So the mechanisms to measure, like, is this sustainable and scalable? It is. It's just going to require us doing our work. And then, yeah, there's an element of, with any book, right? You don't know what's going to happen, but I think it's a safe bet that people that aren't supporting the arts right now, people that are feeling hopeless, angry, maybe an anthology of an amazing writers is enough to galvanize. Someone can drop that, $20 or whatever we charge and buy one for a friend. That's how you start a mighty blaze.
Yep. You do what you can do at the time, and then you see what happens, that's what makes it exciting. That is what makes life an exciting adventure, folks. Yep. So I have 2 more questions for you before we release you to your Thursday evening. And one of the questions is, because I do, I'm traditionally published, but I do have some experience with small presses just because of the people I work with. They are published by small presses, which are great, or independent presses. And P.S., you're now my go-to guy for all of my questions about indie presses, small presses, and also self-publishing, because I know anything about this, and I get questions all the freaking time. So this is your guru right here, people. Sean's information is in the chat. My question is, so your deadline is April 13th for the first book submission roll call, I'll call it. When might those books then be available? Like if you're doing print on demand, do they get edited? Is there an edit period, or do they just kind of go up as they are? Or I'm so curious.
So it's a great question. So right now, and there's always room to grow, of course, but I've worked, so for the last 5+ years, Morgan Ryan is 1455's creative director. She's a genius. And she has other clients, but she and I have a special working relationship. Virtually everything you see on our website, many of the movable type covers, and just a lot of our collateral and my podcast, she works on and designs. So we've got a professional book designer. She helped me design the cover for This Kind of Man, my last work of fiction. I've got 2 other part-time workers that are obsessed with this cause and have some experience. So I also, look, don't have the bandwidth, therefore I'll make the bandwidth, but the pieces will be edited, approved. My experience with movable type has been the quality, and I say this very with genuine gratitude. The vast majority of submissions are of such quality that they do not require and frankly don't warrant heavy. And I have zero ego. So I will say this as an aside. I know people. No names will be named. There are some people that love editing and being involved in lit mags, so they can say, I've been editing all these pieces and I've had my hands. And it's like, if you can just stay out of the way and let good writing shine, let it happen. So the books will be curated, agonized over. Every piece will be professionally laid out. I'll say this as a humble brag. The books are going to look better than the majority of independent and Big Five. I see Big Five books all the time that I think the design is awful. I think the execution is mediocre. The covers don't feature original art. Wherever possible, I want to curate and get a writer paid to help design the covers if that's if that's possible. Keep it organic, but they will be professional products. And I invite, if anyone is sufficiently intrigued. First of all, again, seriously, thank you for listening. if you have doubts or questions, I want to hear from you. No one can do something like this unless they expect pushback, a lot of skepticism, and I'm here for it. Like, I understand it. And I might not even give you the answer you want to hear, but I'll answer any and all questions. What we're trying to do is put very beautifully designed professional books in the world at a very low cost and spread the word. But, I can't make any other guarantees than that.
Well, what could be wrong with that? And what could be better than that? So astonishingly, I've had you for almost an hour, which is shocking. But my last question is really, like, you had just invited people to write into you with their questions or their comments. And as a practicing writer yourself, and as a businessman and a community leader and a disruptor and a sort of lightning rod for people's hopes and dreams, what message do you have for the writers who are going to be coming to you with their books, and also the readers who will buy those books? So what is your message going out to your audience?
Look, the best problem to have is be confronted with so much good work that you don't know what to do with it. But I would say, for people that are submitting for the book contest, again, we're doing it's pretty broad and messy, but it's like, I didn't want to have our first book contest be like a novel. I didn't want to exclude an amazing memoir or collection of poetry. I think, again, if we're fortunate enough to have some success, I would love to be able to start breaking those things out. But writing something that could only come from you. We certainly at 1455 are not chasing any trends. So I'm not looking for a particular type of book on a particular type of topic. I think the calls for the women writing anthology and the young poet anthology explain themselves. We do go into some detail at the site about what we're looking for. And again, intentionally specific and vague, like the theme of silence, the theme of hope, it's definable, but you can take that in a lot of directions, which is what we want. But for the book contest, I apologize for sounding corny, but like, if you have a good manuscript, I'd love to see it. And I will say, I apologize in advance. We're only going to be able to pick one. My credentials are what they are, but I don't presume that I have any right to judge anyone or say this one's better. It's going to be a tough decision. But again, you don't go into something like this and expect everything's going to be easy. The decisions will be made painlessly, and I won't disappoint anyone. But I'll say for the 100th time, I apologize for being repetitive, but it's a good problem to have. If I'm seeing a lot of good books come in, that validates my suspicion, my conviction that there aren't enough good books. There aren't enough good writers. We've got a big enough world to help accommodate that. And that's not taking any shots at the big five that publish your work. Well-deserved. It's not taking a shot at independent. It's like, we can coexist and still lift other voices up. But this is just an addition, a very modest addition to a vibrant, evolving industry. But my conviction is that we don't have enough books. We don't have enough music. I discover new writing every day that humbles me. And I was going to say, Jenna, the other thing I'd say, you brought up our pal, right? Heather Cox Richardson, who, I read religiously. I think there's a case study there that 20 years ago, she would have been dismissed as a blogger. And like, well, if you want the news, you've got to go to a newspaper. You need to read Newsweek or Time. Like, these are the vetted insiders that know the game. And that's been almost entirely flipped. I read the New York Times and the Washington Post, like with with my nostril plugged, because of the very things you mentioned about consolidation and big money. It's harder work to find authentic voices, but they're out there. We all can help promote them. But I feel like all bets are off. Like, only the big five know what the best books are because it's in their interest to get the best books. Of course, that's not the case. Just like when CDs were still ascendant, the record labels weren't necessarily looking for the best music. It's a business. So a little guy like me is not going to disrupt any of the big trains that are purposefully moving down the track. But I'll feel better if this generation's Herman Melville, right, doesn't have a book languish in their drawer for lack of options. So that's where I find my hope.
Oh, I absolutely love that. So you guys heard it here first. I do not think you are a little guy. I think you are a big guy, good white guy with a big heart, bringing art into the world. And if you've got a good book, Sean wants to read it. You heard it here first. And we are so grateful to you for bringing more art into the world, because we know that you're not, as our friend Ellen said, going to be making books that feature women's backs. They're going to be looking away from the reader. Like, we know you are going to make real art, and we cannot wait to see what 1455 Books does. So thank you so much for being here today and giving us your time, and we cannot wait to see your success. Blazers, thank you so much for bringing your light to our blaze. Have a wonderful weekend with lots of good reading.
Thank you so much, Jenna. You're the greatest. This is another notch in the belt of admiration and appreciation I have for you. So thank you so much. Thank you, Blazers. Thank you, everyone checking in. We all have to lift each other up. If we don't, no one else is going to do it. So we're all in this together. Let's do this.
That's all right. And that is why we are here. Okay, everybody. Love you all.